Hey, 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 all you murder mystery lovers in the digital world, welcome back to another episode of Spliced In Later. I'm very happy to be speaking to you today because it is the first of two movie reviews this week. It's my favorite thing to do on this show, to review the new movies that are coming out. And when I say new, I mean new throughout the world. The last couple of reviews that I've done, Haunted Mansion, Ninja Turtles, Mutant Mayhem, being here in Australia, we did not get those until a month after they'd already premiered, which meant interest and whatever in that kind of subsided by this point. Such will be the case tomorrow when I review Blue Beetle for you. But for this one, a couple of things that makes it very exciting, one of which being that it is being released simultaneously throughout the world. I can be one of the first people to talk about this for people to listen to, or at the very least, I will be a part of the conversation rather than having to shut myself off away from it, try to avoid spoilers, and then talk about it later to bring up ideas and opinions that people have already discussed on previously. And two, I love this genre. I love this character. I love these stories. We've discussed it on previous episodes. We'll go into it more deeply here. But a combination of something brand new throughout the world and the things that I enjoy most, mainly murder mystery extravaganzas, means this is one of my most anticipated movies of the year. And excitedly, how quick this one came out compared to the last one. The previous film in this franchise was delayed several times due to the pandemic and all of that. And then pretty much 18 months later, we got another one. Isn't life good? It's alright. Anyway, today we are reviewing A Haunting in Venice, which is another Hercule Poirot murder mystery. Poirot being the famous detective from the mind of Agatha Christie and her murder mystery novels, who has existed in media throughout the film and television world, played by a number of different actors. In this franchise, it is the third in the iteration played by Kenneth Branagh. Kenneth Branagh is clearly a Poirot fanboy, loves the character, loves these stories. So, of course, he plays Poirot and he directs these films. This is the third film that he's directed and also starred in. He's doing quite a lot of work to get these stories out. The previous films in this franchise, the world-famous, most famous Poirot Agatha Christie story, Murder on the Orient Express, which came out in 2017. And then, as mentioned previously, the sequel, Death on the Nile, which came out towards the start of 2022 last year. With those two and this one, starring a foray of big-name actors, all thrown in together to close-quarter circumstances where a brutal murder takes place, and Poirot, the greatest mind in the land, the world's greatest detective, will sort out the mysteries, unravel the clues, reveal everyone to have a nefarious purpose one way or another, but then hammer down exactly who is the true murderer, the true killer. And us as the audience get the fun of watching along, seeing the mystery unfold, try and solve it along with Poirot or before him, and then judge at the end as to the satisfaction of the mystery, of the murderer, of the reveal, and whether the whole thing was a good experience. This one's unique for me. The last couple Poirots that I watched, I really liked Kenneth Branagh's version. I liked the murder mystery. By the time Death on the Nile came out last year, though, I was really like, okay, I need some more of this stuff. I'm getting it from Knives Out and Glass Onion. I saw See How They Run on Disney+, but I want more. So between Death on the Nile and this one, A Haunting in Venice, I have watched the entirety of the ITV TV show Agatha Christie's Poirot, starring David Suchet as Hercule Poirot. I have to say, without a doubt, as much as I love Kenneth Branagh as Poirot, as much as I liked Albert Finney and Peter Ustinov in those older movies, David Suchet's Poirot was absolutely perfect. I'm sure I recommended it before, but if I haven't, I do have to say, check it out. In some way or another, you don't have to go and watch every single episode. There's like 13 series. Throughout the course of that run, they adapted every single story that Agatha Christie ever wrote about Poirot. If you don't want to do that, it's absolutely fine. I would simply recommend you look online, find the best rated episodes from that show, and just watch them. The great thing about Poirot stories is you can pluck them out and watch them. You don't need to know anything that's happened to him beforehand. You don't need to know anything that's going to happen to him in the future. Everything is like a self-contained little bubble of a Poirot mystery. Sure, you might get some extra benefit if you know who some of the supporting players are who go along with Poirot on his murder mysteries. He's got a few sidekicks in the TV show. But for the most part, it's very well done. Most episodes after a certain point are feature-length episodes with, again, big stars. It's actually fun to go back to that old show and see the big stars before they were big. You got people like Emily Blunt in the show before they became big and famous. A whole other names which I'm blanking on at this point, like Christopher Eccleston before he was Doctor Who. Tons and tons of stuff on there. I don't know why I'm delving too much into that because I'm not reviewing that show, but out of context for you, to do that meant going to this movie. Originally, I was like, okay, I've spoiled every murder mystery by Poirot there's ever going to be, so I won't get the unique experience going to a murder mystery not knowing what the killer is. Death on the Nile, when I saw that, I hadn't seen that, so I was like, whoa, cool. Whereas Murder on the Orient Express, I knew beat for beat exactly what was going to happen. I still enjoyed both movies, but I had a very different experience with both. So with this one, originally I was like, okay, I'm going to know what's happening. But in a fun thing for all fans of Poirot, even people who have analysed every bit of media like I have, A Haunting in Venice, while based on a Poirot story, specifically Halloween Party, is doing its own thing, has its own spin on that mystery. I believe the cogs are still there, so the culprit, the reasoning is all the same, but the execution, the vibe, the themes, wildly different. I couldn't remember the mystery while I was watching it. Some things clicked, but not enough for me to confidently know exactly what was going to happen. And there were some different things that definitely didn't happen in that old episode or show or book or whatever it is. Meaning, I got to have my cake and eat it too. I got to have my knowledge of the Poirot character and his sidekicks and the world that he lives in, and still get to sample a relatively new murder mystery story. And I have to say, pleasantly, happily, I loved it. I thought it was great. I don't know where it ranks in terms of the three Kenneth Branagh Poirot stories. I love each of them for very different reasons. So I think it's going to have to sit with me for a bit before I decide which one is better than the other. But I will say that each one has a very distinct, different feel and vibe and execution, meaning each one feels fresh. And this one was a very fresh, unique. For someone who's just seen a whole bunch of Poirot stories, over like 170 or 180 of them, I haven't seen a Poirot mystery quite like this one, because it leans into the supernatural side, the spookiness. There's a little bit of horror element in here. The idea that maybe higher forces are in play committing these murders and things, and that Poirot may be up against something that science and reasoning cannot explain, which is a unique place for that character to go and a unique backdrop for a murder mystery story. Reviewing this stuff was always hard, especially for a murder mystery, because you can't really go too much into it. You can't talk about the plot, because up until a certain point, a person will die, meaning the story will shift a certain way. You can't talk too much about the actors involved, because to talk too much about one and not about the other might imply that certain characters don't make it to a certain point in the movie or have bigger roles than others. So apologies if this review is short or vague. I'm doing the best that I can, I think. My advice to you, though, is just to go see the movie. It has my endorsement. If you love murder mysteries, if you love Poirot, if you love yourself a little bit of spooky time around Halloween, this is going to be a great movie for you. But the bare bones of this movie, it's taking place in 1947 after World War II, which is a unique time for a Poirot story to take place. Normally it's in that sweet spot between World War I and World War II. Poirot, he's hanging out in Venice. He's retired for like the 10,000th time from crimes because, solving all these things, seeing all these murderous people kill people, it's heavy on your soul. So he's just out in seclusion. But he's enticed by an old friend, colleague of his, Ariadne Oliver, played by Tina Fey. She's essentially the Agatha Christie stand-in for these movies, a murder mystery writer that often uses Poirot's stories to influence her own writing. She wants Poirot to come to a spooky mansion here in Venice because it supposedly is haunted. Someone spectacularly killed themselves there not too long ago. And during a Halloween party, a seance is going to be held. And she is saying that the seance person, the mystic, I don't know what they're called, medium, I guess, is so convincing to her that she genuinely is starting to believe that it's possible. So she wants the world's greatest detective, Hercule Poirot, to come to this seance and see what she cannot, call out the fake if it's there, or if he cannot, then accept talking to the dead is real and all that shit. So Poirot, he can't help himself. He does go along. He meets certain characters, all tormented by their own grief, especially around this particular suicide in the house where a woman killed herself. The seance happens. There's some tomfoolery, some trickery. You don't exactly know if it's legit or not. But then, holy shit, when someone mentions that the suicide that occurred in the house could maybe have in fact been a murder, someone's dead. And then trapped in this house, it's isolated by the canal in Venice with a terrible storm coming in. Poirot locks everybody inside until he figures out what's going on. But throwing a rub into the mix is that while he disputes ghosts and phantoms and demons, for some reason, Poirot is hearing voices. He's seeing children chanting but cannot see them. He's seeing the ghosts in the mirror and in the taps and all of that stuff. So not only does he have to try and solve the murder that has just been committed, but potentially the murder that over-encompasses everything else by trying to stop additional murders being done, sort out the fact from fiction, try not to be killed. Poirot escapes death a couple of times in here, before the inevitable bit where he slams the hammer of knowledge down and reveals to the audience and to the world what has been going on. Whether it's supernatural or not, you will have to watch the movie and find out. Again, that's all I can really say about that plot. And I think that's good enough. That's enticing, right? To go see this? Surely it is. Now, as I said, I really liked the movie. I love a good murder mystery, and I love when it's executed in a way that's satisfying. What's great about the Poirot stories, and these Kenneth Branagh ones as well, is the mysteries, whether they're obvious or completely out of the blue, are always supplemented by evidence throughout the movie. It's not like those other murder mysteries where you get to the end and the detective is saying, I solved this because I saw and did all these things that you didn't see on camera, that I spotted that no one else did, blah, 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 blah. It's like, okay, but as a participant in the murder mystery, the viewer kind of wants to see if they can solve it as well, which means to get to the end and be like, there were all these clues that I was never privy to, how can I solve it? That itself can be a bit of a disappointment. With this one specifically, the solution at the end, all the clues are planted throughout the movie. They're very subtle. They're not slam you in the face clues. If you are paying attention, you will probably figure out who's done what and how it has occurred. So that when Poirot explains it all at the end, it's satisfactory. If you solved it, you can go, yes. Or if you didn't, you can go, oh, it was right there in front of me and I didn't see it. So that's the most important thing in a murder mystery, is the murder mystery satisfactory. You bet. It's engaging, it's intriguing, it keeps escalating, and it has that extra bit of supernatural thrown in to really throw you off your toes. Which brings me to another point about why this movie is so good, is the direction and the execution. Unlike the other two films, which while set in specific locations were part of a grandiose sort of scale, like the Orient Express in the mountains or that boat on the Nile in Egypt, this entire movie, for the most part, is set in this spooky-ass house in the middle of the Venice Canal, and it does not leave this location. So it's very claustrophobic, especially with the fact that none of these characters can escape, can leave, with the walls closing in on Poirot. The way Kenneth Branagh directs it, it's very twisty, turny, some interesting ways of looking into the stress in Poirot's head and his psyche. A couple of shots like where the camera's strapped to Kenneth Branagh, so as he walks, you're sort of walking with him. A couple of shots where you are standing in place of him, so people are speaking directly to you. Shots that go Dutch angle or upside down, walk in between out of walls and things. It's probably the best use of direction that Kenneth Branagh has had to do in these 3 movies. It really takes the skill that he clearly has, and he really gets to have a lot of fun with the atmosphere and tension of this. Throwing in the spooky horror stuff, that was my one apprehension going into this movie. I was like, is it gonna be the jump scare party where it's just boom, bang? There are a couple of them, but they work in conjunction with the mood and tension of the movie. So it can startle you, but it's not just to scare you. It's very unsettling, unnerving. There's a lot of creepy visuals in here, which makes for a very engaging watch, in my opinion. The sound design in here is great as well. There's a lot of use of for instance, if you can hear sounds or voices or children laughing, the sound, especially if you're in the right cinema, the sound echoes around you. So it's like you can hear the voices of somebody, but it's not coming from directly in front of you where the screen is. It's coming from behind you, which adds to that sense of the house being haunted and ghosts and all of that stuff as well. Again, making for something that's very unsettling. But when it pulls back away from the horror stuff and down to the murder mystery, the reveal, all of that, it doesn't alleviate to big, loud, grandiose music stuff. It's very zoned in on who's speaking and very intense. All in all, just a very engrossing watch from all different angles, direction, sound, all of that. And the performances are great too. Kenneth Branagh as Poirot, he clearly loves him. He loves the character. I think he really enjoys being in the role. If you told me after Death on the Nile that they're even going to make a third Poirot movie, I wouldn't have believed you, because I just did not think there was that interest in it. But if there is, and he has the enthusiasm for it, I would love to see a whole different ton of movies with him back as Poirot, with some of the more famous cases. His little mannerisms with his pedanticness, he's got a little bit of a mean streak, but a little bit of comedy as well. He says a line in here about if you wake the bear, don't cry if he tangos. It's so weird, but funny. So he's engrossing, he's engaging to watch. And of course, the most important thing about a Poirot thing is that when he is revealing the mystery, giving you the solution, if you are not enraptured and engaged with him talking, then what's the point? So he holds your attention whole fast. And there's always a little bit of tragedy to him as well, which I can't go too much into it as well. But it bleeds into all 3 movies here. I can't talk too much about the supporting players. They all serve their role perfectly in terms of being each having their own agenda and mystery to solve. No one's particularly innocent. No one's not up to some sort of mischief going on. But everybody's balanced particularly well. There's always that big name star who jumps out at you. In this case, it's Michelle Yeoh. She's playing the seance woman. Michelle Yeoh, she's class act. Regardless of what she's in, she's a mesmerizing performance. A lot of the other actors I didn't actually recognize. I know Jamie Dornan, but the others, I know their faces, but I could not tell you their names. But no one outperformed anybody else. Everybody was very, very restrained in the role that they were in and kept the mystery alive. Excluding all of that, Tina Fey as Ariadne, Oliver, the sidekick. In the last couple of movies, Tom Bateman was Poirot's sidekick. In this one, it's her. She's a lot of fun. It's a restrained Tina Fey performance, but I prefer that, to be honest. And I do like when there's someone with Poirot for him to bounce off his ideas with. And she's sort of a firecracker. She challenges him. She argues with him. It makes sense why she was quite the recurring character in most Poirot stories. So yeah, great performances all around. All in all, a very satisfying, welcome murder mystery Poirot story, which, I wasn't sure if it was even going to get to come out with the strikes. I wasn't sure if it was still going to be particularly good, especially doing its own Poirot take. Taking a inspiration from a much lesser known story, not one of the big ones that everybody talks about. The spookiness, the horror stuff, I was afraid of where that would take the stuff, but in actuality, it's a fantastic movie. Very well done. If you're looking for something to see, this is what I would recommend easily since the last few weeks. Ninja Turtles is great as well, but so far since Barbie and Oppenheimer, this has been the best movie I've seen so far. So awesome. If you're a fan of Poirot, if you like murder mysteries, if you looking for a little spooky film to fill your itch around Halloween time, or if you just like good movie making in general, this is a good one and you should check it out easily. 8 out of 10 from me. Might be on my top 10. I think it is. But we're getting towards the finish line here in 2023, and there's some big competition for that top 10 spot. So who's to say? Especially with a few more movies yet to come this year. Thank you very much for listening. I hope you've enjoyed. I will be back pretty quickly. Tomorrow at some point, I will watch and review Blue Beetle for you. Whether anyone cares or not, as I said, is irrelevant. I know it came out a month ago in America. I don't know if it was good. I don't know how people felt about it. I did hear that the box office wasn't great, but if it wasn't released simultaneously around the world, maybe that's why. But at least for my Australian viewers who have been waiting for Blue Beetle or are intrigued by Blue Beetle, I'll be able to give you some sort of opinion on the movie before you either see it or don't see it for yourself. Either way, it's 2 Spliced In Later episodes in 1 week, which doesn't happen very often, so be happy about that. So until tomorrow, thank you very much for listening to me. It's always a pleasure. Stay safe, stay kind to one another, and I will see you tomorrow. You've been Spliced In Later. Adios, muchachos. I'll catch you next time.